Hi, welcome. On this video, I'd like to discuss what sets this system of training apart from basically every other system out there that promotes training as a learning-based exercise. And again, when I'm talking about the source of the problem in the dog training world, it's directly linked to how learning is applied, its application in such a way that allows many dogs to hold control even as they're responding and going through the motions of the process. Now, what makes this system of training really different is in how it approaches the process. It approaches the process as a relationship changing process based on specific interactions which advocate changing the perceptions of the dog from the dog to the owner. And so when you look at, again, drawing a comparison, because again, what's very popular in the dog training world is this learning based approach, which again is very entrenched. And so when I talk about something different, it's very difficult sometimes for people to kind of get their heads around it. But here's the example to really look at when you're wondering why it is how it is that things can look a certain way and not be, even associated with how this learning narrative is applied in a very superficial way. Is the example I'll use is because, again, dogs are social relational animals, so it's very similar in a lot of ways with what happens in the context of a process. Is when you're looking at a relationship problem between, say, a very selfish child and a parent, is again going into a situation like that and simply, because this is what is happening, is simply just motivating the child to respond and looking at the response in a very superficial way, saying, okay, the child is doing A, B, C, which just from appearances represents that good things are happening. But again, it's just appearances. But you have to look at what's motivating the child to respond, and you have to look at the context of the relationship problem. So therefore, when you're looking at a process, the process has to take on the right form, which means there has to be control, there has to be integrity to that process that's going to encourage or advocate the parent to invest certain ways, to interact certain ways. So when I talk about this system of training being interaction-based, it really parallels the proper style of parenting. So if you look at the 4 styles of parenting, a good example to kind of use as to what is happening right now in the dog training world is permissive, okay? And permissive meaning that everything is based on basically how people feel, okay, and looking at things through a certain lens. And so this system of training would follow more of a authoritative approach, which is, you look at what the experts come into agreement with is what's the best parenting style. That is it. Not the authoritarian, okay? Again, there is an over-top parenting style, and again, this is even in the dog training world. When you see what these trainers who promote more permissive, what they will do is they'll take trainers who are over the top and try to kind of spotlight them, okay? But only in a way that is meant to promote a wrong path, okay? Promote this learning ideology, which in itself is inherently flawed. Okay, that is the source of the real problem in the dog training world. But again, getting back to this whole issue of specific interactions, okay, when you look at this system of training, how it approaches it, it follows that path. So certain things, again, can be a little bit more challenging because everyone's always looking at, okay, what, because it's very popular, what, I needed something to motivate the dog to do what? To respond. But that's really the wrong way to look at setting up the picture, because again, it's the same example as a selfish child. I want to motivate the selfish child to respond so I can sell that picture as is without any sort of depth or getting the parent to invest properly. And that is the problem. So this is why when you look at the contrast and in real time, you'll see it. If you interact, again, if you take this system, if you interact in very specific ways with a dog, you're going to see truth revealed, okay? And then if you're, again, applying this learning narrative, everything will look absolutely fantastic. But this contrast, you'll see it, but then you have to ask yourself the question, what's really going on? And so you can apply a test in real time to this narrative to expose the issue. This is why, again, when you look at certain interactions that are happening, as problems are happening in the relationship, the interactions are based on control. Okay, who's in control, and the dog challenging certain interactions based on being brought under influence. So it's very profound, but again, it will make sense if you really think about it. So again, going back to this issue about a motivator, this is very difficult for a lot of people to get their heads around, because they're like, well, then what's the motivator? Well, the motivator is the dog coming into agreement with a process, okay, that follows the right path, that is within the context of what's reasonable. Okay, so the language of the methodology, it speaks a certain language, and it comes together in such a way the dog comes into agreement with it. Okay, and these control issues begin to diminish. So the process itself, you can reconcile the process. When I sit down with dog owners and really talk through it, it makes complete sense. And then they start to understand why it is that perhaps they've invested in this learning narrative for a period of time. And it makes sense at that level too, why it is that things can look a certain way and not be. So again, I really encourage people to think about it. Every time I talk about this system, you can apply it to a human example in a relationship problem between a parent and a very selfish child. It's exactly the same. But a lot of times people are so entrenched in this that if you talk any other way, it immediately it challenges them in such a way that they cannot get their head around. But here's the thing, is the problems are very real in the dog training world. They're very real, and many dogs and owners struggle in their relationship with their dogs, even after applying this learning narrative. And the reason for that is because, again, it's stepping into a process where dogs are holding a level of control. It doesn't line up. Okay, trainers are not looking at response, not putting it right in proper context. Okay, they're not putting it to the test. But beyond that, they're approaching the process in such a way that they're not approaching it as at a depth level. Okay, they're looking at it, instead of interaction based, they're trying to just paint a picture, get the dog to respond, and sell that picture as is to the dog owner. So thanks for watching.